Middle of the sixth midah, chesed hu, and we learned as the background to this, what the Talmud Devorah brings us to try to explain a concept. He brings us to the Sefer Yechezkel, the time of the Chorban Bayis Rishon, and it was obviously a time of great, I was reflecting on this morning, it was obviously a time of great corruption for Klal Yisrael. Contemporary with Yechezkel was Yirmiyahu. And Yirmiyahu was considered a failed prophet. He was a failed prophet because apparently the culture of Klal Yisrael at that time was to worship avodah zarah. It's a little bit difficult to understand, but it's also it's kind of easy to understand. You know, the whole Klal Yisrael gets involved in this culture, which is just to be kechol ha'amin, as simple as that. Let's be like everybody else. And at that time, being like everybody else meant worshiping avodah zarah, and being spiritual meant worshiping avodah zarah. It's like everybody become a Buddhist, you know.
Would that go back to Menashe?
Oh, so exactly. So this is the time of Yirmiyahu. The time it was at the time of the Chorban. I have an interesting ha'ara to make, a mudna ha'ara, which is only slightly related to this, but I think it's more related than meets the eye. Everyone's familiar with the Gemara. The Gemara tells us a story that there was a melech tzaddik, Chizkiahu HaMelech. He was one of the greatest, asher halach b'derech aveirah. I pointed out that in Tanakh, in Sefer Malachim, you have two kinds of kings, those that were like David and those were like Yerovam ben Nevat. So the good guys and the bad guys. Everyone's compared to either David. In the beginning of every melech, it's either compared to halach b'atzas b'derech David aviv, or he didn't. He went in the way of Yerovam ben Nevat. So Chizkiahu was a melech tzaddik. He was one of the greatest tzaddikim in history, Chizkiahu, and he was not only a great tzaddik, but he was a great king. He instituted an educational program here in Eretz Yisrael. He won wars. He was a wonderful melech to have. They thought it was Mashiach, Chizkiahu. It was an unbelievable time. The only thing is that he never got married, or he didn't get married. He didn't get married, and he was single. So an alter bacher as a king, which might have been part of his success. So Yishaiyahu, who was the Navi at the time, the Gemara tells us in Brachos that Yishaiyahu came and said to him, "Why don't you get married? You should get married. It's a bad example for people. It's a mitzvah to get married. Why don't you get married?" So he said, this is not a shailah. The reason I didn't get married is because I saw I'm going to have banin marim. I'm going to have bad children. So better not to get married than to have bad children. Introduce that into Klal Yisrael at that time. So, first of all, l'dayek, that Chizkiyahu was not only a tzaddik and not only a great king, he was also a navi. He's also a navi who knows what kind of kids they're going to have. Who knows what kind of kids? Even if after you have them, you don't know what kind of kids. Even after they're 30 years old, you still don't know what kind of kids you had. Even the Mafreya. So I mean, he knew that I can't. And ad kadei kach, he was so clear in this conviction that he didn't have children. So we all know that Yishaiyahu gave him musar, and he said that what do you mean? There's a mitzvah to get married. There's a mitzvah for rebuke, and b'hadik hafshe derachmana lamalucha. You can't take Torah into your own hands and mitzvahs into your own hands. You have a mitzvah. So do the mitzvah v'zehu. So Chizkiyahu responded to him, and he said, well, maybe like this, you have a daughter, maybe I'll bury your daughter. He said to Yishaiyahu, Navi, Gadol, he said, you have a daughter. It made sense, a Navi and the Navi Hador and the Melech Hador should get married. I'll marry your daughter, and maybe between Shlit'a and Shlit'a Didach, I'll have some hatzlacha. And that's what happened. And now, the way it works out is Chizkiyahu was right in his nevuah, and he had Menashe. His son was Menashe. So Menashe ends up was Yishaiyahu's grandson. In fact, Menashe killed Yishaiyahu. It says that he killed Kol HaChachamim Shebi Yerushalayim. It says in Tanakh, Mipeh El Peh, which means from one side, Menakotz El Akotz, from one side to the other. He went through, and he hated Talmidei Chacham, and he killed Talmidei Chacham, Chizkiahu's son. So a great father, great grandfather, but he was a Rasha. And he killed everybody. Mipeh El Peh, Ein Peh El Yishaiyahu Anavi, says the Gemara, that the Peh, the Navi, Niv, Navi means the mouth, the mouthpiece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the lips of HaKadosh Baruch Hu were killed. So,
was Chizkiahu too hard on him? Is that why he became Rasha?
I have no information on this.
I mean, it seems like you have two parents who are tzaddikim, and they really want to have a tzaddik.
A lot of pressure there.
There's a lot of pressure. Yeah. He rebelled.
Yeah. I remember after Moshe Feinstein Zatzal died. So like a week later, there was he had a grandson. So they wanted to name the grandson Moshe Feinstein, obviously, they named after the Zayda. And Reb David Feinstein said, no. He says the pressure on this kid to be grown up called Moshe Feinstein is it's going to be ridiculous. He's going to like this a guddle to be able to see. But I don't know if that's a shot. Okay, that's maybe a shot. What I wanted to bring out was a very stark and radical point, and that is that if you really look at the history of Klal Yisrael deeply, who caused the Churban bias? Yishaiyahu. He's the one who caused the Churban bias Rishon. He's the one who caused the Gullus, and he's the one that put us through the situation we're in now. I would go so far, being radical, he caused the Holocaust. If Chizkiahu would not have gotten married, and this was Chizkiahu's cheshbon, so Chizkiahu was very, very right. And what he was really saying, if you look at like the superficial way to look at the Gemara, is hey, there's a mitzvah, you might have a cheshbon, but don't make cheshbonis, there's a ribbon shalom. But this is Yener cheshbon here. This is not just a cheshbon. I'm telling you, Yishaiyahu, that if I have children, I am going to destroy the Jewish people. I'm going to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. I'm going to destroy Klal Yisrael. Possibly, I'm going to send them into Gullus. I mean, you're talking very. And on this, Yishaiyahu said, "Bahadi kavshid Rahman Elam l'chol is none of your business. You have to do a mitzvah." Okay, it's. You talk about shook me up this point. You talk about like the micro and the macro. You talk about aveirah l'shma. Talk about sometimes it's just not the. It feels like yes, it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, but how much do I have to do for this mitzvah? There is a concept of aveirah l'shma, isn't there? I mean, there's a concept. I always tell the story about the Chazon Ish that I heard from. Do you know who Rabbi Zvi Kushelevsky is? Big Rosh Hashiva who I'm close to. So we went to visit once. I went with him to visit his father, who was the Rav of Be'er Sheva at the time. His father, Rav Kushelevsky, was a brother of Rav Gurvitz, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Gateshead. Why they had different names is a Jewish thing. But Kushelevsky and Gurvitz are brothers, full brothers. They just had different names. But we went to him, so he told a story. I remember he told stories on Purim morning. He told us a story that always stuck with me. He said that when he came to Be'er Sheva, he was in Be'er Sheva maybe 30 years at that time. It was the original Rav of old Altstadt Be'er Sheva. When he came to Be'er Sheva, so the mikvah was so dilapidated that it couldn't be used. And he had to build another mikvah, and he had to get a rishayon from the area to get a. Now, when I heard the story, I didn't appreciate what it means to get a rishayon from the area. It's the most. I mean, can you imagine back then, where they were. All right, that's a different schmooze, But as somebody told me recently, when the government of Israel was founded. So it was a bunch of Polishers. So their idea of a government was to look at the Polish government and transport it to the Middle East. So here we are. This answers all the kashas.
Absolutely.
Like we're in Poland, 1933 here. So to get a rishayon for a mikvah, so they told them that you can't build a mikvah because we have certain places allocated for divrei kodesh. And there was one place you could build a mikvah, and that's where the old shul was. He already built a new shul. So the halacha is that you're allowed to build a mikvah anywhere except for on top where a shul used to be. That's the din. Where a shul used to be, you could build anything. You can build an apartment building, but you can't build an official merchatz on top of where a shul used to be. That's the din. So he said that I can't do it. I can't build a mikvah there. It's connected halacha. So that's the only place you have to build a mikvah. So he went to ask the Chazon Ish what to do. Should he build a mikvah or not build a mikvah? Should he violate the halacha of? Should he violate this halacha of not building a mikvah on top of a shul or not? So the Chazon Ish told him he should build the mikvah. Connected halacha. So he said, what's the svar? So he told him, the Chazon Ish said that it's worthwhile to burn in Gehenna a little bit so that the oilam should have a mikvah.
He said that?
Yeah. So, that's all. You'll have to suffer a little bit in Gehenna, but the oilam will have a mikvah. So Rabbi Kushelevsky said that. Told me that he said to the Chazon Ish, "What do you mean? What do you mean? You're the one who's paskening. like I'm just going. I'm coming to you. Why should I?" So he said, "No. He says this is the responsibility of the Rav of the city. It's your schus to burn in Gehenna, not my schus to burn in Gehenna. The oilam to have a mikvah." So it's an amazing story, no? Like
they built that mikvah.
They built a mikvah. That's where the mikvah is. You can go look at this mikvah.
You have to wonder, by the way, if the people that said, "Oh, you can only build here," maybe they knew the halacha. They didn't want the mikvah.
Okay, you can wonder about that. But the thing is that what I'm saying is you have the micro and you have the macro. So the big picture is that you need a mikvah. The small picture is we're doing an aveirah now. So what do you do in such a case? So the answer is you can't say, well, it's mutter. It's an aveirah, but sometimes you do an aveirah. So when I'm looking at a bigger story than Be'er Sheva, I'm looking at the Jewish people, all of history of Chizkiahu saying, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to be the one to destroy Yerushalayim. I don't want to be the one to put the Jews into the Holocaust. I don't want to create pogroms and Holocaust. That's not what I want to do. I don't want a Spanish and Portuguese expulsion on my head. Yishaiyahu told me, no, you have to. The opposite of the Chazon Ish. This Yishaiyahu is opposite of the Chazon Ish. So, and Yishaiyahu in this psak, it would seem, not only was murdered himself by his own grandson, Menashe, but Klal Yisrael, suffered so, and almost, as we learned in Yechezkel, almost was destroyed. So I think that this is really L'inyanenu. I just want to speak it out over here. It's mamash L'inyanenu. Because let's fast forward a half a generation to the time of Yechezkel. Menashe came. Yirmiyahu is walking the streets and saying, destruction is coming. Yishaiyahu's with the board in front of him and the board back, walking back and forth. Like the destruction is coming. The destruction is coming. Nobody's listening. Menashe tried to have him killed. That didn't work out too well. And he got the holdest Menashe. Got everybody to be over Avodah Zarah. Yirmiyahu, they were so bad that Yirmiyahu couldn't stem that tide. He couldn't stem the tide. And even though, if you look in Kinos, and in Melachim Chav Beis, I believe it is, by Yikonein Yirmiyahu, Yoshiyahu, so the grandson, or the son of the grandson, I think the way it worked was Chizkiahu, Menashe, Amon, and then Yoshiyahu. So the grandson became good again. He was good. This was a temporary insanity. So Yoshiyahu, it says there in Kinos, was able to get rid of a lot of the Avodah Zarah, but he wasn't able to totally eradicate the influence of Menashe from the Jewish people. So it was so deep and it was so strong, this Avodah Zarah became so deep into the culture that the Churban happened anyway. So Yishaiyahu says that, Yirmiyahu says, at the hesped of Yoshiyahu, that at least he pushed away the Churban 22 years, Communion Aleph base. He pushed it away 22 years. He did. It was a tzaddik. Yoshiyahu was a tzaddik, but not a big enough tzaddik to change the generation. Chizkiahu, he went B'derech Chizkiahu, but he wasn't Chizkiahu. So now we're talking about a very, very bad place that Klal Yisrael's in. It comes, and the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. But before the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, Yishaiyahu has this nevuah, two nevuahs, one in Eretz Yisrael, one in Chutz La'aretz. So he has this nevuah which we talked about on Sunday, and that's the nevuah of the destruction of Klal Yisrael. And the destruction of Klal Yisrael worked, as we read together in Parakut of Yecheskel, the way it worked. Yecheskel had this view, this vision of what was going on in the Beis Din Shomala. And in the Beis Din Shomala, what was happening is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu paskin din, not on the Beis HaMikdash, on Klal Yisrael. Kalya, they will be destroyed. Dehainu, I created the Jewish people for a reason, and they didn't fulfill that purpose. So we'll go the way of the Romans and the way of the Greeks and the Babylonians. I created you for a purpose. You didn't do your purpose, or your purpose is over. You didn't do anything. So we're going to destroy them. He tells to the Levush Habadim, Gavriel, who's always called Ish. He's the only Malach who's called Ish, which is significant. He tells them, okay, take the coals, take the fire from under the kruvim, and throw them on Eretz Yisrael, and throw them on the Jewish people, which was something in Shamayim going on, unfathomable to you, but incomprehensible. But somehow or another, this movement in Shamayim is going to destroy all of Klal Yisrael. So it means that the din, as I pointed out, is that Klal Yisrael is no good. Klal Yisrael has ois gespielt. They have no redeeming factor. The din is out. Klal Yisrael has to be protected, has to be destroyed. The Kruv, says the Yecheskel, went into the fire, took out the coals. The Kruv, that's the angelic figurines that are in our Beis HaMikdash and in the Beis Din Shomala. The Kruv takes out the hot coal. Veniras, says the in Tanakh, kepisas yad, and somehow or another marked on the kruv, on the coal, is a hand. What's the hand? So says the Gemara, that's the chesed that Klal Yisrael did. And now HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that's the ish levush habadim, pulls out the coal. There's a hand, and the chesed changes everything. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this is all unbeknownst to us. This is all going on in Shamayim. If Yecheskel didn't have this vision into the Shamayim, we would never know this story. But this was frightening, what was going on behind the scenes, or above the scenes. What was going on in Shamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that I'm not going to destroy the Jewish people because of the chesed that they did and do and continue to do. So the Ramak explains that don't think that you have the Avodah Zarah on the one side and you have the Chesed on the other side, and somehow the Chesed outweigh the Avodah Zarah, because that's not true. There was already a din in Shamayim, Emes. There was already a din that Klal Yisrael needs to be destroyed. The din is gone. It's gepaskin. It's already finished. So what was the Chesed? The Chesed says that even though there's a din, even though I'm right, even though Klal Yisrael has to be destroyed, nevertheless, I'm not going to destroy them. Instead, he destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, he destroyed Yerushalayim, and everybody breathed a sigh of relief when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Tisha B'Av is a Yom Simcha. You don't say Tachnun on Tisha B'Av because Alo Eitzim V'Alo Avonim, that instead of Klal Yisrael being destroyed, because we have the advantage of the Nevuah of Yecheskel, instead of Klal Yisrael being destroyed, the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim was destroyed. Beseder. So it means to say, there's a very important distinction. It means to say that there was already a din, it was already paskin, and somehow or another the chesed, the Pisas Yad chesed that Yisrael Oishim Zebazeh saved us. So it's not that the chesed got into the din at all. It's that there was a din, and the chesed was al atzad, somehow or another that saved us. That's what we learned from the Sefer Yecheskel. Comes the Torah Devorah, and he learns, and I'm going to get back to Yishaiyahu in a moment. Comes the Torah Devorah, and it says, two great lessons, one bigger than the other. The small lesson is, which we need to explain, the small lesson is that look how chesed could save the Jewish people. What's the small lesson? Acts of chesed. So, somehow or another, whole Klal Yisrael is chayiv destruction, but as Marty said, that there's some women in a sisterhood kitchen baking cookies for the poor, and that's saving Klal Yisrael. So that's unto itself a great message. That's a small message, but that's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu works. And I want to take a minute to understand how that works. But I just want to jump the gun for a second. So B'tzad Echad, you see from the whole story of Yechezkel that Chesed can save Klal Yisrael. It means that even if we'd be learning Torah all day, that wouldn't have done it. Even if we would be wearing tefillin all day, that wouldn't do it. It's dafka somehow Chesed. So the question there we have to ask is, why is Chesed, and how does that go even beyond the final psak din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The deeper message, the Talmud Devorah message of the story is that look what's going on over here. There's already a din. And when there's a din, there's a certain absolute hashkafa that one develops, a mentality that one develops, a killer mentality that one develops, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't develop that mentality. It means to say, let's say, God forbid, you decide that you want to shoot somebody, for good reason. You just decide you want to shoot. The person is just a bad person, and they have no and you decide in your head a din that you want to kill someone. Okay, so that's radical, hard to imagine, because none of us want to kill somebody. But let's say you want to hate somebody. That's already Karavilla saying, I just don't want you in my life. Go away. I don't want you here. When we make a decision, I'm not saying a mashal, but the mashal is the nimshal. When we make a decision to absolutely hate somebody, so we vilify the person. That's what we have to do in order to rationalize our hate. And then, if somebody would come along with some kind of like he's done a lot of good, he did some chesed. We don't want to hear that, because you're ruining my routine now. But in other words, if we're going to decide, let me go back to my radical case. If we're going to decide to kill somebody, I don't want to hear about any good anymore. The din is gepaskin. I don't want to, if I decide I'm going to shoot Hitler, I don't want to hear how he was a Boy Scout. I want to kill him. So in order for me to kill him, I can't be open to hearing anything good. Not that there's anything good to say. I remember, just as a bushel, I remember when that whole Madoff story happened. Terrible. So many people got hurt, and so many. So many little old ladies lost their fortunes, and Hadassah women lost everybody, it was terrible. It affected everybody, particularly the Jewish world. And he was so vilified. I mean, he became like a monster, which is probably correct. He became like the ultimate Haman, the ultimate monster of the generation. But I remember that one of the people that lost his fortune was Elie Wiesel. Okay. I don't think he had such a fortune. He had a few $1 million that he lost. He lost his fortune, and he wouldn't comment to the press. Everybody was talking about how terrible it was. This organization, that organization. YU, I think, lost a lot of money. Everybody lost a lot of money, and he wouldn't comment. So finally, we commented on why he's not commenting, and he's really a spokesperson for many people. And he said that. He said, first of all, nobody's commenting on the amount of money they made with him over the years. That was his first comment. And he says, second of all, that he did a lot of good too. Now here's a man who just lost a few $1 million, but he said he did do. He says, so this idea of just vilifying him, Lagamri. Now when you don't have the loss, it's easy to be a philosopher. But he had the loss. I mean, here is a rich man, now he's a poor man. So he said this idea of just completely vilifying somebody, that they have no redeeming qualities. He says it just doesn't speak to me. It's not something that I think is the correct thing. So I took note of this because it's so connected human nature. When we're angry, we want to be angry completely. Everything the person does is bad. Everything, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they wear their hat, everything is bad. L'mafreya, everything is bad, is a false person. So it's a tremendous amount of Devorah to be able to somehow or another see something good when everything is bad, and I've already paskined din that it's bad. Don't confuse me with the truth. Right? So the answer is, we're talking about God. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu can see the hand of chesed even though there's a din. Becomes a Tomer Devorah, he says, but you know what? We're B'Tselem Elokim, so we're meant to imitate God. We could be godly in this. And being godly means even when your finger's on the trigger, even when it's halfway, the spring is ready to go, if somebody says something good, so consider it. Your mind can't be closed to seeing good. Now, everybody has something good.
So you just shoot his leg?
Just move it.
What was that? It doesn't mean like let go completely.
Of course not. Of course not. It doesn't mean to let go completely, nor did HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He shot us in the leg. He destroyed your Shamayim. But the ability, it's like Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach used to say that, I'm quoting all the dignitaries today. He said, like, what's the difference between somebody in Sahal pulling the trigger and an Arab pulling the trigger? He says the difference is that when an Arab pulls the trigger, he prays to God that he's going to hit his target. And when a Jew is pulling the trigger, he prays to Hashem that the gun should fail and Mashiach should come and this whole thing should be over. That's the like, who wants to shoot something? Like it's a but this idea of seeing the Pisas Yad, says Tomer Devorah, this is not only Hashem could do this, we could do it also, because we're wired that way. We're wired in a godly fashion. So this is pashut within us to be able to, which when you think about it is Herculean. Like if you're being hurt and you've already decided, and the din is correct. We're not talking about the din is not correct. We're talking about, this is God here. We're talking about the din is correct. But the din is correct. Nevertheless, there's a piece of yad. Don't forget about this yad of chesed and the printout. So the Malach Gabriel comes running out with the printout of chesed. What about this? What about this? Okay, like you say, lower the gun. Everything.
The reason why the chesed I'm assuming is because we assume once a person has a chesed, there's still that ability to change. Is that what we're thinking? Is that
you're explaining what I didn't explain yet, and that is why chesed.
Right.
Why particular? Apparently, it would seem that nothing else would have done this. So why does chesed have the ability to change that's point two. Point one is clear here, that we have to be open even as the trigger is being pulled to think maybe not. That's a tough one. It's already, even words, like if you've decided in your mind that you're going to say something very hurtful to a person, and that means that you've been hurt, you thought about it, you've got the really brilliant thing to say. It goes through from my brain, it goes through from my heart, it goes through my brain, from my brain it goes through my nervous system goes into my throat goes onto my tongue, and now I'm ready. And how do you stop it at that point? That's a very, it's already there. I can't stop it any longer. It's already there. So this, the line says, and the Gro says, that if you can just stop it right there. Not talking about stopping it before it happens, but stop it there at the end. So zoche laor hashchina she'ein kol beria v'malach yichalon liskos. By that second is the moment to get the shechina. You could be zoche to nevuah. Whatever the person says at that moment, believe it, because it's mamish nevuah. You're zoche to nevuah at the second of stopping. So this is message one. Why chesed?
And why does it say Talmud Torah Keneged?
Right, but not for this.
Not for this.
No. Look, before I get to the why chesed, I just want to excuse me a second, because before I get to the why chesed, let me just get to this point, back to this point of Yishaiyahu. There's a lot of things flying around here. The point with Yishaiyahu, I think, is this. Chizkiahu was right, Yishaiyahu was wrong on a macro level. Correct? You with me on this? Are we all multitasking correctly? I'm a little bit ADD because I have it in a few different places at once. But if Yishaiyahu was wrong, Yishaiyahu caused the Churban Beis HaMikdash. However, think about this. If Chizkiahu would have done it his way and wouldn't have had children, and there wouldn't have been a Churban, then that would have been the end of the Malchus Beis David. Because Chizkiahu was the last in the line of the Malchus Beis David. It means that Yishaiyahu came to Chizkiahu not telling him, hey, you got a mitzvah, why don't you do a mitzvah? He was telling him, you are the Malchus Beis David, I see Mashiach. They thought, Chizkiahu maybe thought himself he was Mashiach. Yishaiyahu said, no, you're not Mashiach. There's still going to be a Mashiach. So if you don't have children, who's going to be the Mashiach? We already have an Devorah. The Mashiach has to come from David HaMelech. There is nobody else. There isn't anybody else. You have to have children.
He had no brothers?
No. And it comes out that Chizkiyahu is saying, yeah, but look at this tension. Do we want Mashiach? Very expensive. Mashiach is very expensive because now we're talking about it's going to cost us a Churban Beis HaMikdash, it's going to cost us Golus, it's going to cost us inquisitions, pogroms, and Holocaust. Do we want Mashiach? Yishaiyahu says that that's the ultimate goal is Mashiach. We want Mashiach. So you're talking about the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish is saying the aveirah lishma is doing aveirah now for the long-term good. Chizkiyahu is saying, I'm doing an aveirah now by not getting married for the long-term good. Comes Yishaiyahu who says, no, I'm a bigger Navi than you are. It's the short-term good, long-term bad. So I could see even further. The one thing that we both see is that the kid's going to be a Rasha. And there's going to be a Churban. So you're seeing further than me? No, I'm seeing further than you. I'm seeing David HaMelech. I'm seeing Mashiach. I'm seeing Mashiach. That's what I'm seeing. And with all of the costs, I'm seeing Mashiach. Isn't this the ultimate in seeing something positive when everything about it is negative? It's the ultimate. In other words, we're not only talking about in the dimension that we're in. Even if you look at all of history prophetically as it's going to unfold, there's a good at the end of this, and that good is the. This is why Rabbi Akiva said when he said the Chorban Bayesheni, this was why his point was Kol Man David Rachman Olotav. At the end, we're going ahead in history. At the end, it's a good thing. So it's hard to see the end, but you have to have such a kind of a mind and such a kind of a heart that when everything is bad, to see something good.
So why Adam did the chet also. I mean, it's the same idea.
Yeah. It's long term, short term, long term. That's what we're talking about over here. And this is where the openness of redemption in the literal sense of the word is here. So let me just 5 minutes. Let me just explain chesed for a second and the way I understand it. I was remembering this that the in Shabbos we should probably spend more time on this. There's so much to learn in Torah. But on Shabbos we say Kel Adorno Kol Hamasim. It's a nice song. Everyone in the world sings it. Usually that. Everyone sings it, and I'm wondering how many people understand it. Baruch Baruch Lefi Kol Neshama. So let me just skip to the middle and then I'll go back. Here we say Schus u'mishar lifnei chisai chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavoidai. It's one of the praises. Again, Kel Odin al Kol HaMaisa, Baruch Lefi Kol Neshama. Trust me that this whole Kel Odin is referring to nothing to do with this world per se. The whole Kel Odin is talking about what's going on in the world of Malachim. Al Kol HaMaisa means not in this world, but the entire universe. Baruch Lefi Kol Neshama. The Arizal says Kol Neshama is a name for Malachim. It's talking about the Malachim. Galei v'tuvay malei olam, da'asu svuna soivim v'maisai. because you know that, and the rest of this is all talking about the spheres. If you're so inclined, so take a look at it and you'll see. But do you know that the spheres are, there's what's outside of the world, which is called the Keser, and then there's the Zion spheres to go through the world, which is the Bria. Bria is full of Chesed, Devorah, Tiferes, Netzach, Yisai, and ultimately Malchus, which is the purpose of the world. So there's the word in Kabbalistic words, not to be afraid of it. But there's the Bakif Kol Almin, and then there's the Memali Kol Almin. There's the aspect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which surrounds the world. That's the Keser, be out of this world, something we can't understand, and that's what's in this world which we can't understand. So Godlai V'tuvay Malay Olam, Da'asuzuna Soivavim Aisei. There's the Malay Olam, and then there's the Soivavim Aisei. So I'm only saying this to bring out that this is not talking about anything we think it's talking about. It's talking about the spheres. But here we say as follows: Schusu Mishar. When we're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Schusu Mishar Lifnei Chisai, Chesed V'Rachamim Lifnei Chivoda. Says the Vilna Gaon. Consider our garage should have the Vilna Gaon. Schusu Mishar Lifnei Chisai. Says the Vilna Gaon, Haim Shnei Hanhagay Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shebehem Shoifei Ta'aretz. So just keep this in mind, Shabbos morning. Leave just one pasuk. That there are two ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Shofei Ta'aretz, judges the world. One of them is called Schusu Mishar Lifnei Chisai, meaning what's going on in front of the Kisei HaKavod. And the other thing is what's going on Chesed V'Rachamim Lifnei Kivodo. So one of them is Lifnei Chisai, and one of them is Lifnei Chivodo. If you daven Nusach Sfard, it's Chesed V'Rachamim Malei Chivodo, I believe. But let's go with this Nusach Hagro. Heim Shtei Hanhagoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shebehem Shoifei Ta'aretz. Schusu Mishar Lifnei Chisai. That first one, how's that sound? Schus umishar. Does that sound like what? Midas ha din.
Yeah.
Why? Schus.
Mishar.
Schus.
If you're a Zakai.
If you're a zakai. It's all, in other words, it's a merit system up there. The schus is not a positive thing. I mean, we use it in a positive way. Like sometimes the last thing you want somebody to tell you that your schus will help you. Don't do that to me. Exactly. Schusu bishar lifnei hisai hu shem adnai dina de malchusa dina. Amazing words. Dina de malchusa dina lefelo. Oh, it's all about din. I don't know why he brings that. Ach schus umishar shall call adam. So schus umishar. Vasisa is hayashar, right? Hatzur tamim alay. Tzadik v'yashar hu. That's the midas hadin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzadik v'yashar hu. Yashar is din. Yashar is always din. Mishar. Chesed v'rachamim. So where does that come into it? Lifnei chavoidai. Hu midas harachamim. Shem yud kei vav kei. So there's a din and there's a rachamim. V'im einon, says the Gra. V'im einon maspikin aschus v'amishar. Oz hachesed v'arachamim lifnei chivoidai. What a beautiful going. When we were singing and he's thinking that schusu mishar lifnei chivoidai is mamish the Tomer Torah. Schusu mishar lifnei kisei, because the kisei is in the. Let me give it a little bit more. In the Siddur HaShalah, coming from a different angle. Lifnei chisoi, chesed rachmi lifnei kavoidoi, says the Shalah HaKadosh in the Shara Shamayim, roimeis l'shnei kavim. There's two different ways of doing din. Akisei roimeis l'kisei din, because it says, Al kol zoisu mishar, k'moshikosav atzur tamim polei tzadik v'yasherhu, v'hu schus. And it's called schus. Why is it called schus? Schus sounds so positive. Af shu chayv. Meaning it's a merit system. That's all. That if you want to know where the din takes place, it's taking place in the Heichel HaSchus. So it means to say that, let me go back to our case of the Korban, there was no schus. If there was already a din, means there was no schus. I the chesed. So the chesed is not yet a schus and din, because there was nothing. We had no redeeming factor. Elamai. Chesed v'rachmim lifnei chivodo. So chivodo is the makam of this world. Shehu kav hachesed. And it means that ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu made this world as an olam chesed yibana, and if we're inhabiting the world and we're doing tikkun olam and we're helping each other and so even though in din this whole thing doesn't make any sense, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it's a lost leader, but I'll do it anyway. Let them. In other words, in din it makes no sense. Let's annihilate them. But the chesed is, the mile of chesed over even Talmud Torah is that it's mamash in this world, hands-on. It's all hands-on. Meaning that everything until Yadayim is esoteric. So, Manoimer Lahem Yisrael, what can I say already about Klal Yisrael? If they're doing chesed zeh b'zeh, so even though the din is like this, but they are fulfilling the concept of malchus. They are living in this world like respectable human beings, and they're helping each other, and they're doing something for each other. So, what about it? So there's a malchus, like something is happening. At least it's a continuity for malchus. So the Klal Yisrael is worshiping Avodah Zarah, Gilei Arayos, and Shvichas Damim, and killing Yishaiyahu, and trying to kill Yirmiyahu, and like who would want to live in such a time? But somehow they were doing chesed, and by the Chorban Beis Hamikdash Hasheni, so we weren't killing anybody. We were worshiping Avodah Zarah, but there was no chesed. There was sinas chinam.
Were you executing the chesed of that door that's taken? Maybe it was a chesed. Maybe it was a chesed of another door that's taken. I mean, it didn't have to be adopted that door. They were doing chesed.
There were. I mean, because that's what it says in Yechezkel.
The lumen is on the
Lasos, right. So that's the Kvod Hashem. The Kvod Hashem refers to the Shekhinah, right? The Kvod Hashem is what's going on in this world. So there's a, I mean, I think we're just touching it, but there's a tremendous concept over here that in din, meaning, and I'm going back to Yishaiyahu and Chizkiahu, and in din there can be no logic to this, but that's in Lifnei Kisar, that's in the world of Bria. In the world of Yadayim, in the world of reality, I still need that guy to plant the potatoes. We still need the Yadayim in this world, and somehow or another, if we're making ourselves useful, best thing is if we're being Zocha B'din, but if we're making ourselves useful in the world of Chesed by helping each other, so then the world is still happening. So we're preparing the world maybe for our children.
We'll survive.
We'll survive, and ultimately Mashiach will come. Even if you have a door which is Kulei Chayav, Mashiach will come. Dafka, a door Kulei Chayav. So how does it even exist, a door Kulei Chayav? Why isn't there a Mabul? Why isn't there a Harb? And the answer is that Kulei Chayav is in Shamayim. The Kulei Chayav is not here. But there's this idea of Osin Chesed Zeh B'zeh. So to make the Sikkum, there's so much to learn here in this Shalah, and the whole Kelodin. Really, it would be good if we took a departure from everything for 3 weeks and went Kelodin. But I don't think I'm going to do that. But we should do that. But let me just make the rikuz, that here's a case where in the world of Shamayim where there's total din, and Afal there's no total din, and the din is guilty, negative, death sentence. And then the Pisas Yad comes and says, yeah, but they do chesed. And the chesed, it's dafka chesed. Not they do Torah, not they wear tefillin, not that they do chesed, because chesed means that malei chivodo. So if my world is still working, it's not worth destroying the world. What was the problem with the Mabul? Nobody's doing chesed. They were killing each other for Shava Pruta. So at least there's some chesed over here. So the chesed keeps you, you're not going to be destroyed as long as there's chesed, even though the din says destroy. That's the first limud, importance of chesed. The second limud is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can see this chesed even when he's in the middle of paskening din. The fire is burning, the coals are in Gavriel's hands, he's giving him, according to the Gemara, lashes for not carrying out the charbon. What are you procrastinating? But even with all of that anger, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can still see this little bit of chesed and not get carried away. Okay, that's God. Of course, he's not going to get carried away. He's 100% Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu. But the answer is we're wired that way too. So the exercise here that becomes to be able to recognize some kind of a redeeming factor in somebody, even when they're completely off, they're completely wrong. You see, if somebody is, I think, let me just add with this thought here, that if somebody is, if somebody gets on our nerves, annoys us, or hurts us, they could be 80% good and 20% bad. The 20% is very annoying, but that in our minds, I believe the way human nature works, if let go, if you just let it go without exercise, the way it works is we see the 20%, we don't even see the 80% anymore. 80% completely vanishes, and you see it. I'm not a big bucky in Shalom Bayis, I wish I was, but I do see this. Like people have timers all the time. Like my husband this, my wife that, my husband this, my wife that. Like does it do anything good? I was just like, is there anything good? Let's focus on it for a second. The moment that you can see, like even one good thing, just recognize one good thing. It makes wonderful potato knishes, whatever it is. Some chesed somewhere along the line, and there isn't a case of nobody that I know is married to absolute Rishayim. And this is what he brings here, that even in the Gemara, Rabbi Chia, who had such a horrible wife, a machashefa, as a wife, he would ask for advice, she'd give him milchas. Just terrible, trying to trick him up all the time. They asked him, tell me to ask him, why he's staying married to her? Why? Like just go, she's causing you misery. Dayenu, shebegadladas banenu, v'batzilad must speak. And he doesn't say just for himself, for everybody. Dayenu, it's must speak. Enough, Dayenu. That self kol self, she's raising the kids, apparently she's doing okay with that. And she's saving me from doing aveirahs. So this is a very honest statement by Rabbi Chia that he's going to go do aveirahs if she's not. And so what's he says? So marry somebody else who'll save us from doing aveirahs and raise my kids and be a good cook and give me what I want. Why can't? So the answer is that's not the pshat in the Gemara. The pshat in the Gemara is that he didn't lose sight of the two chesed things that she did, even though in din she had no reason to stay married to me. So it doesn't mean everybody has to stay married, but it does mean that we're not allowed to lose sight of the good, which is there, if there is good there, which I reckon there always is some good there. So that's, and even in the middle of the anger, the middle of the divorce, okay, sof kol sof megadlin espanei. Sorry for overage.
So chesed is malchus. That's why
chesed is malchus.
Okay. That's why he doesn't destroy.
Chesed is malchus.
He sees the malchus in things.
Chesed is malchus, and that's the nakuda of chesed. Chesed. Chusam misha lifnei chisai, and chesed is lifnei chavada.
When he created the previous midos that Hashem is forward-looking, that he's shenosi avon because he's waiting for us to do tshuva.
And then this is gadol al kulam, because even if there is no future necessarily, there's still a toiv there.
When he created the world with din, he knew it wouldn't work that way. So
that's us.
We're
12:30.
there's a forest brisser. Isn't that? We didn't speak in these terms, but isn't the issue that there was a aveirah bris?
Yeah, we messed up the covenant.
So the deal is off. So bedin,
There's no deal.
there's no deal. So then bedin we're like every other nation, and then that befalls us. But then the chesed is somehow.
That's that's the pella here. We were made for bris, and the chesed somehow saved us.
And we always have that because, like Misham Parms Fasenu, the backup plan, a remnant or something will exist that can then rise to that point. But here's the chesed.
But it's only chesed.
Which bris were we made for?
What do you mean? The bris Sinai.
Brisina, not
And
the
bris
Ben
and
of
Absar.
Sarim.
Both. Let's say assume there were two brises.
So if we focus on the Ben of Sarim, could there be an element of it that since, but the midas of Avram is still there, so then there's something to build it from.
This everything that we're learning today is the Pshat in Avraham.
So
The Pshat in Avraham is, even though Avraham was Moser Nefesh his whole life for Emes, right? He was breaking idols and he was jumping into Kivshin Aish. It's called the Ish Chesed, because the Uftu of Rav Avinu wasn't that he was the Balshita. The Uftu of Avraham was that he did Chesed, and that saved everything. That was it. Well, that's what saved everything. In other words, that began the tikkun of the Chet of Adam Arisha.
So can we say that even though we're made for the bris of Ben Absarim,
We're not made for the Chesed.
but we're ready to there's something in us that will be resurrected or that will preserve it or that deserves as long as we're typed in that.
It means, in other words, there's a 2-point program. Like one program is to try to get us that there's no din. That's the best thing. Do the bris and learn Torah, and that's the Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, I believe. That's what Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam in terms of the bris. Bris Sinai Torah. And then there's the Indian of, but what if, like the backup plan, the net. Here's the guy walking between the two towers, but where's the net? The net is the chesed. So, you really have to work on the plan B here. In case the din fails, that there should always be the safety.
Because the original bris is off. Far's bris is a far's bris, not just
what do you have?
we had a bris that's gone. We don't have that.